And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this stream from Australian Indian Radio, brought to you via Chaintext Multimedia live stream services, and a stream that is brought to you directly from Brisbane, and where the temperature at the moment is 17 degrees and it's sunny. So, wonderful to have your company on this day, which is one day before the end of financial year in this part of the world. Well, and I hope you're all preparing for tax time. I know you have got a little bit time afterwards, but inventories need to be done, books needs to be closed, so there's a lot that needs to be done. Software packages need to be rolled over, financial year and your payroll year, all of those fun jobs that need to be done. But what do you do? Those things need to be done. But today we'll bring to you an update of the COVID-19 restrictions throughout the country and see what's happening where and where do we stand right at this point. Hard to believe today, the 29th of June 2021, we are still talking about the lockdowns and of course all the restrictions. We thought that by now, it would still be there in some form, but not in the way that it is. It's mainly to do with the Delta variant, which of course, according to sources, began in Maharashtra. But anyway, we will look at all of those as we go along. But right now, let's take a look at this Delta variant and how it continues to snake its way around Australia.
We should brace ourselves for more cases. Transmissibility is at least double what previous variants have been.
The Delta variant of this virus is certainly moving around our community far faster than anyone could have imagined.
This virus spreads fast. Sometime before the 16th of June, a Sydney limo driver caught coronavirus, probably from an overseas air crew. From that single source, there are now multiple clusters across Sydney. From New South Wales, it spread to Victoria and Western Australia.
We've seen what can happen when this variant is left to spread unchecked in the community.
There have been separate outbreaks in Queensland. They're dealing with an alpha virus outbreak from hotel quarantine, and a separate Delta case when a fly-in, fly-out mine worker caught the virus in Brisbane hotel quarantine as well, before heading to the Northern Territory for work.
We have made the decision that we need to extend the lockdown for a further 72 hours.
We know that this is a highly infectious strain and we really need to get on top of this very, very quickly.
The spread of the Delta variant in New South Wales has been extraordinary. At a southwestern Sydney birthday party, 24 out of 30 guests have been infected. The only people who weren't infected were 6 people who were vaccinated.
We are seeing almost 100% of transmission within households.
The Delta variant emerged from Maharashtra state in India late last year. It spread globally and is elbowing out other variants. It's thought that one infected person can spread to 6 others, compared to just over 2 with the original Wuhan virus.
India had so many infections very quickly, that probably combined with low-level immunity without vaccines, perhaps some therapies that might have exacerbated mutation rates.
Virologist Professor Damien Purcell at the Doherty Institute has been following the evolution of the coronavirus since the pandemic began. He thinks a rapid spread of this variant can mostly be explained by how efficiently it attaches itself to healthy lung cells.
The spike is capable of attaching more readily. It's more capable of introducing the virus and infecting cells, and perhaps after it's infecting, it's capable of producing slightly more virus within the lung cells. This is a very infectious, transmissible virus, and we have, I think, a great vulnerability at this time.
What everyone in New South Wales wants to know is whether a 2-week lockdown will be enough to halt the Delta variant. Professor Ian Marshner is part of an infection modelling group at the University of Sydney.
The early indications are that the rate of increase is certainly steeper than what we were seeing with the introduction of the alpha variant in 2020, probably on the order of 50% greater. So for each week of delay, you can expect about 5 or more times the number of infections.
It certainly is a concern, the increased transmissibility in the observation around children.
The other feature of this New South Wales outbreak is that it's infecting children. The British experience suggests this might be because the virus is finding a gap in community vaccination.
The UK has very wide use of vaccines compared with many other countries, particularly Australia, and it's predominantly the aged population vaccinated first, and the vaccines seem to be very effectively preventing infection with the Delta virus in those older vaccinated people. And it's almost exclusively, not entirely, but very largely infecting younger people in around the 20 to 29 age bracket who are not vaccinated.
Damien Purcell has also found something about the Delta variant that could be very worrying. You may carry it for longer without knowing it.
We've had a bit of a chance to look at this virus in the lab and also in the community. It's slower to announce its symptoms, which might be one of the more significant points.
If the asymptomatic period is longer, then you will essentially have a longer time for an infected individual to infect others. And although we've got a strict lockdown, there is nonetheless a small amount of mixing that is continuing. So a longer asymptomatic period would not be a good thing.
So the question is, how many more people in Sydney have been out and about without knowing they're infectious?
We now know that there have been a lot of people infectious in the community. With this Delta strain, we know that we are getting positive cases within 24 to 48 hours after the exposure.
We have to get used to the fact that numbers will continue to increase, so anywhere from 5 to 7 days after we go into lockdown. And so again, that's the end of this week when we really need to look at how things are going and whether we've got it under control.
And it's clear that the Delta is far from being the last we'll see of new and more dangerous COVID variants.
The thing about
And as has been stated, that it is far from gone, as Sydney is bracing for more cases. Here's that report.
Seeing children on the ice smiling and having a blast is absolutely invigorating. Seeing it as it is right now, it's really sad.
Former Olympian Liz Kane runs a winter ice rink at Sydney's Bondi Beach. For a second year running, she's been shut down by COVID.
Everyone's suffering. It doesn't matter really what business that we all have, we're all in the same boat. It's a really hard hit for us emotionally, mentally, for everybody. It's a really difficult situation.
Liz estimates losses of about $100,000. Those she hoped would flock to her attraction are now attracted by Bondi Beach's pop-up testing clinic.
I think that everybody in Sydney probably is pretty angry about this situation, and that it's not monitored and taken care of in a much better way.
This COVID wave began in Bondi, home to the man authorities believe is patient zero. The eastern beaches faced restrictions first, but the Delta COVID-19 variant quickly evaded the local lockdown.
From 6 p.m. today, all of Greater Sydney, the Blue Mountains, the Central Coast and Wollongong will go into a lockdown.
To stop people spreading the virus, the government stopped about 6 million people from spreading throughout the city. High above the city streets, one COVID patient is isolating.
Well, I'm a few days into COVID isolation and now I'm starting to feel the effects.
The state's Agriculture Minister, Adam Marshall.
Just having no energy whatsoever, even just standing up for a period of time can be quite tiring, and undertaking menial tasks quite exhausting.
He caught the virus while dining with 3 other state MPs who had each received their first dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Adam Marshall isn't yet eligible for a jab, and says the Commonwealth's vaccine rollout is incredibly slow.
That is quite disappointing from my perspective, because that should be the primary focus and responsibility, excuse me, particularly of the Commonwealth Government, is to get Australians vaccinated, get jabs in arms as quickly as possible.
Authorities suspect the virus entered Australia with an international flight crew who infected the limousine driver, taking them to hotel quarantine. Police launched an investigation that lasted almost 2 weeks, but they've announced they won't be charging the driver.
He was found to be doing the right thing, and that's the reason why he was exonerated.
Rita Corey from the state's Hire Car Association has spoken to the driver and says he's known for being COVID safe.
He has confirmed to me that he was wearing a mask, in addition to sanitising his vehicle as required.
Rita Corey says she's concerned with the way this driver has been portrayed.
You can't legislate for stupidity.
He is neither stupid nor a mongrel, nor doing anything wrong or objecting to the vaccine on careless grounds. He has medical concerns that he is working through with his medical team. I've been very alarmed and perplexed as to why this driver was being vilified.
On Friday, the government...
So there we are, that driver, and he did everything right according to him and the operators, but still, he got infected by the crew which came in from overseas. Well, right now, as we know, that Sydney is bracing up for more cases, while it has been recorded 18 new cases.
Unlike most of us, Kate Mulhern and her family can only leave the house for one reason.
The adults we're retesting on the 2nd of July and on the 7th of July, and the isolation ends on the 9th of July at midnight.
Provided they return 3 negative tests. For 7-year-old Finbar and 5-year-old Eamon, holidays began on Friday. But so did 2 weeks of isolation after a student at their school in Sydney's East tested positive for coronavirus.
Liam just called to me across the other side of the house holding his phone up. Have you seen it? I was like, what?
Around 500 students attend South Coogee Public. 4 are now positive. That number is expected to grow.
All students are now close contacts and must get tested and self-isolate for 14 days regardless of a negative test.
There are 18 new cases, 17 are linked. The source of one is unknown, but had been in the Bondi area. Of these cases, 12 were in the community, while infectious.
We have to be prepared for the numbers to bounce around, and we also have to be prepared for the numbers to go up considerably.
To avoid that from happening, the Health Minister wants people to get vaccinated even while in lockdown. Revealing of the 30 people who attended a house party, 24 have now tested positive. The only ones who didn't were the remaining 6 guests, who all happen to be health workers, and all of them are vaccinated.
For those who still out there think that vaccinations aren't important, they can find excuses not to have vaccinations. They can kid themselves not to have vaccinations. Short message is, get vaccinated.
Easier said than done, according to Kate Mulhern, who as a teacher isn't eligible.
Especially considering how contagious this new strand is, I think that the government really needs to rethink whether or not teachers are considered frontline workers in this.
While most are doing the right thing and staying home, others are bearing all to break the rules.
Unbelievably, we saw 2 men sunbaking naked on a beach.
Their relaxing getaway was interrupted by a deer. The men were chased into the Royal National Park and got lost.
Not only do they require assistance from SES and police to rescue them, they also both received a ticket for $1,000.
While the 2 nudists were sent home, Kate Mulhern and her family are hoping to leave in 11 days.
So there you go. That's an update from there. People, the extent that they would go to prove a point. Well, do we have a vaccine passport in Australia? And how would that be? And what would its consequences be?
Fun in paradise. if you can get there. For people looking forward to a holiday, and those welcoming them, it's been more than a year of crippling uncertainty.
It's a feeling of kind of anxiety, both for the businesses that are involved and obviously for the tourists that are planning their holidays as well.
In Cairns, boat hire operator Nikki Gemelli hasn't been able to plan staff numbers, stock levels or events.
We find ourselves in a scenario where we really have difficulty doing that because of the consistent border issues and COVID bubbles.
But perhaps there's a way forward. Visitors to Victorian ski resorts have had to show a recent negative COVID test to get on to the mountain.
We have barriers across the road. We've got checking points down at the road. Anybody presenting now needs to be able to show to us, if they're from Melbourne, that they've had a negative test in the last 72 hours.
That requirement has now been downgraded to a recommendation. But it's the start of opening up travel in the COVID age. From Thursday, Europeans who've been fully immunised can enjoy quarantine-free travel in the region. They have a vaccine passport, which comes as a verified digital certificate allowing them to travel.
We welcome you to a Tuesday night in Phoenix, Arizona, Game 2.
In the US, some sports stadiums have opened vaccinated-only sections that let fans closer to the action without social distancing. If you want to see Bruce Springsteen on Broadway, you must be vaccinated.
It would give us all confidence to actually engage in a lot of these broader activities that maybe we're a little bit nervous about at the moment.
We have the technology to begin doing this in Australia too. Get one jab and it appears on your Medicare records. Get the second and you get a digital proof of vaccination certificate stored on your phone. Here's mine. The issue is caught between different levels of government.
And that certificate would enable you to be able to travel and not have to be locked down or not be able to cross borders. And ideally, that's a situation we'd be able to get to in Australia.
Hopefully, you can maybe have, I hate to use the word liberties, but you have more freedom to do things when we are in a potential case of a hotspot being declared.
A vaccine.
And that would be the way of the future, and that is what has been called for quite some time, that, people, only the vaccinated and people with that certificate be allowed to travel, and simple as that. And if all the countries work towards something like that, which will be very good. I mean, of course, we have seen that some countries have already implemented that. Well, right now, what is all of this going to cost us in the long run?
My dinosaur.
Praveen and Seetha migrated from Malaysia more than a decade ago. They have 2 kids and are thinking about a third. But like many families, they're wary of how expensive it could be.
And of course, that comes at an absolute cost, and that's really the crux of what we're talking about today. It comes at a huge cost to consider having more.
The latest intergenerational report shows they're not alone. Handed down by the Treasurer today, it says the uncertainty caused by COVID-19 has slowed Australia's birth and migration rates. 5 years ago, the population was predicted to hit nearly 40 million by the mid-2050s. Now it's forecast to grow to just 38.8 million by 2060.
We see Australia's population growth today at its lowest level in 100 years.
And that is accelerating trends that existed before the pandemic. Australia is getting older on average. In 4 decades' time, 23% of the nation will be aged 65 or above, up from 16% now. Health funding per person will more than double to 26% of government spending. Aged care spending will soar from 1.2% to 2.1% of GDP, and there'll be fewer people working to pay the bill, with labour force participation to fall from 66.3 to 63.6%. And that all has consequences for the federal budget bottom line. The report doesn't forecast a surplus for 40 years.
There's no plan from the government to deal with these challenges which have been laid bare today.
It's important to remember that reports like this one are based on assumptions that can and of course do change. They're meant to be guardrails to warn policymakers of the direction we're headed and ideally get them to start difficult political conversations and ultimately act. Economists say extra investment in training, robotics and artificial intelligence is one way to improve the outlook.
This sounds really scary.
The nation has to become more productive to grow the economy.
The goal is to
upskill every worker or as many workers as possible from low-skilled jobs to middle-skilled jobs.
Praveen and Seetha hope governments around the nation heed the warnings.
I do agree there has to be some change for productivity to increase.
They want to ensure their children enjoy at least the same living standards as they do. James Glenday, ABC.
And of course, having that same...
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world. And don't forget that tomorrow we'll bring the real estate update with Usha Chandra right here. Well, right now, the India Day fever is begun. And on Thursday is the official poster launch at the Emporium Hotel. It's an invitation-only event, and a lot of people are going to be attending that event, and preparations are underway, as you can see from this video.
हसीना जुल्फों वाले जाने जहां ढूंढती है काफिर आंखें किसका निशान ओ हसीना जुल्फों वाले जाने जहां
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Angela Owen, and it's with great pleasure once again that I throw my support behind India Day Fair to be held this year on the 15th of August at Suncorp Piazza at South Bank in Brisbane. This is for many years, and it is wonderful to know that it is continuing and growing from strength to strength.
And it is wonderful to see that kind of support from Councillor Angela. And of course, there is going to be a lot more messages coming very soon as we move around. And of course, the poster launch of GoPure Queensland's India Day Fair is going ahead in a very COVID-19 restriction compliant venue with all the restrictions put in place. But of course, as they say, the show must go on, and last year we could not hold the function, but this year it's being held at South Bank for the simple reason that it's a closed-in venue where we can monitor everyone coming in. They can actually check in. If it was out in the park, in Roma Street Parklands, it would always be very, very hard for people to actually monitor who's come in, because people can just walk in unless you fence off the whole lot, and that's a whole lot of things that need to be done. So, of course, looking at South Bank, which is a COVID safe plan, and of course people will come in and check in via the Queensland check-in app. And it's undercover, so all our VIPs are very happy that they won't have to sit out in the sun once again. Well, going on with the ending part of the news today, well, sometimes, when are you happy in a sad situation? Can you be happy in a sad situation? Sometimes you can, like you'll find out from this report.
It's a bittersweet moment that once seemed impossible for the Killian family.
Like my wife put it at one point, I've never been so happy to be sad.
It's also a time of profound gratitude for the people who supported this family reunion.
No idea how I could thank you, other than try and be the best person I can.
France Killian has pancreatic cancer and is spending his last days in a Gold Coast hospital. Last week, Queensland Health refused to grant a quarantine exemption to his son Mark and his wife Annalie.
Over there is the bed, and in that little passage over there is the bathroom.
The couple had arrived the week earlier from Los Angeles and were being quarantined in a Sydney hotel. But they'd also been fully vaccinated and had recorded 3 negative COVID tests.
I hope I please heard. I really do.
France Killian's family on the Gold Coast told 7:30 how they were struggling with Queensland Health's dismissal of Mark's offer to follow the strictest of protocols.
They're willing to go over and above, and in every respect. They've done, taken every reasonable precaution, and still nothing. There's no, we don't understand why there's no solution.
24 hours later, after consulting with the federal and New South Wales governments, Queensland Health relented. It's a test case of how authorities deal with fully vaccinated people in quarantine.
They will have to, of course, have quarantine here in Queensland, but we'll facilitate them from that quarantine to go to the hospital and see their father as quickly as possible.
Hey, Andy! The Killians flew up from Sydney to the Gold Coast on a private charter the following day, thanking the nearly 50,000 people who signed a petition in support of their cause.
Every step along the way was just another step closer to my dad. And so rather than it being a wow moment, we had these steps along the way.
Mark Killian and his wife have been able to visit France every day since.
You've no idea how much appreciation and how much compassion we feel from all of you.
There's absolutely no question that this has really, warmed his heart. And all he ever wants to do is just thank people. So it's lovely to see that,
A bittersweet moment indeed. That is a time when even though in sadness, someone is happy with the outcome. So, it is that kind of a situation. Well, right now, the lead out story for today is we've looked at all the states, and right now let's look at Darwin and look at the lockdown that's been extended there.
On the first morning of Greater Darwin's lockdown, most people were taking the new restrictions and mandatory mask wearing in their stride.
You can get outside for an hour and go and get some fresh air and some exercise. It's, mentally stimulating.
We just have to make the most of our holiday because we're here for 2 weeks in NT, so hopefully in a day it's going to lift.
But that wasn't to be. The lockdown now extended for another 3 days, with details of the first exposure sites relating to a growing gold mine cluster, and one more positive case, a Darwin man in his 50s who recently travelled from the mine.
He was in the Darwin community while infectious for about 36 hours.
We're clearly in a grave and difficult situation in the territory now. We have 7 cases.
The lockdown began with the positive case of a worker at the Newmont-owned gold mine in remote Central Australia. The hundreds of co-workers who've travelled to Darwin and could have been exposed to the virus are now all accounted for, the government says, while others have travelled interstate.
Right now, our biggest concern is not the test results of these people. It is the high-risk exposure site and the close contacts of the new case.
The first high-risk exposure site is a Darwin pub called the Buff Club, and there are also other lower-risk sites across the city. Authorities are almost certain there will be other cases related to this confirmed Delta variant.
We're in a race. We're racing to catch up with this virus. We're racing to catch up with those people who've been affected by it.
And another blow for Territory residents, a yearly celebration known as Cracker Night has been delayed.
Once we are through this, we will name a new date and we will have one hell of a party.
That party had been set for the 1st of July. Felicity James, ABC News.
Well, of course, things happen and people need to make those kind of changes. And it is not easy for organisers because there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. But, of course, the safety of people is paramount. And that needs to be upheld. And, of course, right here in Brisbane with the restrictions, please do take care, remain vigilant, and once you're outside your home, make sure that you've got the mask on. Of course, I'm in a locked studio, so I can, not have the mask on. But please observe all the rules. And as I mentioned before, that Gopia Queensland's poster launch on this Thursday is going ahead in a slightly different format so that it's compliant with the rules and regulations and the safety requirements as set in by Queensland Government. The venue, the Emporium Hotel, is compliant and the format has changed from a stand-up cocktail to a sit-down one. So we'd like to see you all there. And of course, mark your diaries for the 15th of August for India Day Fair this year in a safer environment of the South Bank Piazza. Well, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Enjoy the rest of the day. It's gone up 1 degree now. It's 18 degrees and sunny outside, looking beautiful from where I am. So enjoy the day, but most importantly, remain safe. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye.